once again, Vegapunk has just dropped another massive bombshell on us within this latest chapter of One Piece. We learn that 900 years ago, water levels rose 200 meters high and never went back down. This effectively drowned out and hid many ancient cities around the One Piece world. Oddly enough, upon hearing this, it instantly made me think of a few key characters, like fishmen, since I do believe that they have a major advantage when it comes to finding these lost civilizations, since they can just swim there. I wouldn't be surprised if this rising water event that went down 900 years ago is even the key reason why fishermen hate started in the first place. If your home gets flooded, it's more than likely the fish people's fault. Outside of the fishermen though, some other characters I thought of were Law and Kid. Pretty random, right? So, when we last saw them, Law's crew got destroyed by the Blackbeard pirates and Beppo just barely managed to escape with his captain. Since the Polar Tang was torn to bits by Marshal they Teach, their only means of escape was to dive and swim underwater. Where will Beppo take Law? Well, I feel like there's only one real option, and that would be Elbaf. Since, going back to chapter 1056, we saw that the closest island to Winter's Island is in fact the Land of Giants. And to back up this notion, even the Straw Hats, before Dory and Brogy showed up, were also planning to flee to Elbaf, since that is the closest island to Egghead, and the current island that the log pose is pointing towards. Beppo, being the Heart Pirates navigator, probably has the same game plan as Nami in this scenario. So, that is why I believe that Beppo and Law will be arriving at Elbaf relatively soon. And then there's Kid. Kid and his crew got absolutely destroyed by Shanks and also got sent underwater. I know there's a lot of memes going around right now that Kid is dead and that we'll never get to see him again, but I highly doubt Oda would kill Kid so unceremoniously. Kid, time and time again, has shown us how resilient he is, and has even been shown as a parallel of Luffy. Luffy was saved by Shanks, who sacrificed his arm for him. And then there's Kid, who lost his arm to Shanks' crew. Luffy didn't fight Bellamy at Jaya initially when his dreams were laughed at in the bar. And then there's Kid, who openly declared that he'd kill every single person who would dare laugh at his dreams. Even down to their powers, Luffy is all about being hot and rubbery, whereas Kid is cold and metallic. Hell, Kid, in this chapter, even got the Damaro Black Gang to cosplay his crew. That's exactly what happened to Luffy after his crew were eradicated at Sabaody. Kid is getting the same Damaro Black treatment after his crew were annihilated in Elbaf. And guess what? After getting blacked, Luffy came back stronger than ever. I believe Kid will also parallel that aspect too. Will he take 2 years to do that though? I hope not. One thing's for certain in my mind though, and that is that Kid is very much alive. How will he survive the turbulent waters of Elbaf despite him and Killer having devil fruits? Well, I think Beppo could save both of them on his trip to Elbaf. I just hope that they could hold their breaths long enough for him to get there. Or hey, if Beppo takes too long, then maybe even some other giants will fish them out of the ocean. Because while Dory and Brogy don't like Captain Eustass, I'd guess that the rest of Elbaf may feel differently about him since he was a key factor in Big Mom's downfall. Big Mom was hated by the giants of Elbaf for killing Jorel and later killing Mother Carmel along with the orphans of Sheep's House. It was never stated that the giants wanted vengeance against her, but I don't think they lose too much sleep knowing that she'd been defeated. In fact, maybe they'd even be grateful towards whomever took down the monster. So that itself could be a good reason for some giant to want to fish Kid and Killer out of their watery graves. Another interesting development that could befall Kid, Killer, and even Law and Beppo would be their discovery of ancient civilizations. So, now that we know that many lost cities exist 200 meters underwater, there's a chance that Kid and Killer could stumble upon some ruins since they're currently sinking. Again, I don't know how they'd survive since they can't breathe underwater, but it wouldn't be the first time they've had to fight against drowning since they did exactly that in Udon Prison. So, what's interesting about this latest chapter is that Oda actually showed us an unnamed underwater city. We aren't sure what this place is or even where it's at, but one notable thing that we can walk away with is the fact that there is a ginormous fish in the background. Funny enough, in One Piece, there's no clear distinction between a giant fish versus a sea king minus size. And even then, there are many exceptions. So I'm going to present two different ideas for where these cities might be located. Let's say that this fish we see is actually just a giant fish. Well, I think this could tie in really well with Captain Kidd, because when Kidd first arrived at Elbaf, the first thing his crew made note of was how large the fish in the area were. So maybe there's a chance that this fish could be an indicator that this city is off the coast of Elbaf, which could tie in with where Captain Kidd is sinking. As far as how Law and Beppo could come into play, since Beppo is traveling underwater, they could stumble upon these or other ruins on their journey to Elbaf. What would the gang do with these ancient ruins though? I honestly have no idea. They would definitely have one up on us though, in terms of sightseeing, that's for sure. In terms of progression, I'd be singing a completely different tune if they had someone who could read poneglyphs or someone who had the voice of all things, but for right now, that is yet to be seen from either crew. There are theories though, that Killer has a third eye and could potentially awaken it to read poneglyphs, but that is of course still a theory for now. As far as the voice of all things go, there have also been theories that Law might have it, since during Zou, when Zunisha was talking to Momonosuke, Law did seem to maybe pick up on the conversation. And then there's also the instance at Onigashima, where when Luffy lost consciousness, Law seemed to have noticed that alongside Momonosuke, who, again, has the voice of all things. Of course, this could have just been observation haki though, but I thought I might as well bring it out since Momonosuke was kind of tied into this. So if either, or if both of these theories end up becoming true, then I could see Kid, Law, Killer, and Beppo becoming a real force to be reckoned with in the future if they team up and go deep sea diving. So now, on to the second idea. What if the fish we see in this chapter is actually a sea king? This is where it gets really interesting. So earlier, I mentioned that fishmen could simply swim around the world and find everything that once was. But this notion would get curb stomped if these cities actually existed within the Calm Belt, the home of the Sea Kings. The main reason why pirates mostly have to follow a set path on their way down to Lodestar is because they cannot afford to cross the Calm Belt due to the threat of the Sea Kings. Even the fishmen and mermaids of Fishman Island are fearful of Sea Kings. We aren't exactly sure why the Sea Kings inhabit the Calm Belt specifically, but what if they roam that area to protect the lost continents? That would perfectly explain why no one has been able to just randomly stumble across any ancient history yet. Because, just thinking back throughout the story, many pirates have been able to travel underwater. A few key examples would be everyone who's ever had their ship coated on the Subodi Archipelago. There's also Cricket, Mashita, and Shoujo, who go around the sea hunting for underwater treasure. And then of course there's the fisherman pirates that dive underwater during each battle. And then there's Law and his submarine. And hey, there's even the Whitebeard pirates who coded all 5 of their Moby Dick ships and traveled underwater all the way to Marineford. Many people have gone under the ocean waves, but not a single one of them has found anything from 900 years ago to our knowledge. While that does seem odd at first, it could make sense if all of these lost cities were located within the Calm Belt, because there's not that many people who travels in it. As far as how the Sea Kings could tie in with these lost civilizations, we do know that Vegapunk told us that the 200-meter rise in water was most likely due to the use of ancient weapons. But which, out of the 3 ancient weapons, could have caused this? We saw that, quote, Uranus destroying Lulusia only amounted to a 1-meter rise in water. So what? Was Uranus fired off 200 times in the past? I don't think so, since the aftermath of using such a weapon leaves a distinct giant hole in the ocean, and the only other giant hole out there, besides Lulusia and Big Mom, would be the one over at Eni's lobby, so that just leaves Pluton and Poseidon to raise the waters. How I'm imagining it right now is that 900 years ago, Poseidon sank the world 200 meters and then ordered the Sea Kings to protect the lost kingdoms within the Calm Belt. The one thing that holds me back from fully sending this theory though, is that the Calm Belt only covers a small portion of the One Piece world, and if a majority of the cities were all within 2 straight lines, that would be a bit silly. But I do think that there are some aspects of this that could come true though, like the Sea King's involvement in the preservation of history. The existence of these lost cities underwater within the Calm Belt could even explain why the waters there are so calm. So, going back to Kid and Law now, something that they definitely need to keep up in the pirate world would be a brand new ship, since both of theirs were thoroughly wrecked in their battles. Thankfully, the place they're going just so happens to be Elbaf. So, while it has been confirmed, many believe that the giant tree we see hidden in the background of Elbaf is actually the Atom Tree, which houses, quite possibly, the toughest wood in the One Piece world. If that's the case, and if the Giants wanted to reward Law and Kid for taking down the menace known as Big Mom, I could see them getting brand new ships while they're there. As far as what their goal now would be though, considering the fact that they don't have any poneglyphs, I'm quite honestly not too sure. Maybe there's a chance they throw the gauntlet back down and go after Blackbeard and Shanks for their rubbings. But for me at least, it feels weird adding them into those fights again. So maybe they go a different route. Maybe they go after the ancient weapons. So, because of Veggpunk's message, the fight for survival and the hunt for the ancient weapons has begun. More people now than ever will be taking to the seas in search of safety, and there might even be some of those who would go after the ancient weapons in order to secure their place and position in the world. The reason people beforehand didn't go after Poseidon, Pluton, or Uranus was simply because they didn't know that they existed. Hell, Dragon, out of all people, didn't believe in their existence until just recently. So now, with knowledge of their power being spread around the world, this could incite Law and Kid to go after one. Which one? Well, why not Pluton? The one that they just recently got close to. This is a theory I'm still very unsure about, but I thought it'd be a fun idea to play with. So, since Law and Kid are both shipless at the moment, they'll need a new one. Of course, I brought up the idea of a new Atomwood Elbaf ship, but what if instead they go for the most powerful ship of them all? Pluton. Back while we were in Wano, not only did Law manage to obtain a poneglyph rubbing while he was there, but he was also present during the conversation where Sukiyaki divulged to Robin the fact that Pluton exists beneath Wano's fresh water. Using Beppo, they could easily swim down there and secure a brand new, all-powerful ship quite easily. The only problem would be that they'd have to open the borders of Wano and potentially aggravate the citizens of the country they just saved. While Law and Kid are pirates and they take what they want, I don't know if they have that evil in them. They are brutal to those they dislike, but the Wano citizens and scabbards have treated them like allies for the most part. So that is why I am not super sold on this idea, but I did want to bring it up because I did think it was kind of interesting. Another route for them I'm actually liking a lot right now would be to go down the path marred by flames. So, back when the Strats were trying to pinpoint the location of the final road poneglyph, Kid was the one who initially brought the man marked by flames to our attention. And then there's Law, who also seemed to react interestingly at that information. Well, he didn't say anything, but Oda did make sure to linger on his hidden expression for a bit, which could allude that he has some hints about this topic. Maybe they work together to secure that final poneglyph and lay siege on it. This would effectively mean that they'd be gatekeeping the One Piece together, and they could plunder poneglyph rubbings of whoever comes to complete the puzzle. I think this might be their smartest play, and even a play that Oda has laid out in front of us as well. And hey, this could even parallel Luffy's journey to Roger. So, for Roger, when he was going around collecting the 4 road poneglyphs, he more or less had a pretty easy journey. The poneglyph at Fishman Island was easily acquired thanks to his connections with King Neptune. As far as Zoes and Wano's go, they were also easily collected since he had ties with the Minks and the Samurai. The only poneglyph that maybe gave him trouble was the poneglyph that was under siege by Big Mom. If Law and Kid end up finding the final poneglyph and gatekeep it, it would lead Luffy into a confrontation with his fellow Supernova. The reason this would be a bit poetic would be because Law and Kid were the ones who took down Big Mom on Onigashima, so Luffy taking their road poneglyph would be the Roger equivalent of him taking Big Mom's. You might be wondering, why do I put so much stock on Law and Kid? And honestly, I just feel like Oda has built these two guys up to be key characters in the final war, and I'm simply trying to piece together where they might fit in. Law's full name is Trafalgar D. Water Law. He is one of the few members of the D clan in the series, and not to mention, but he was even shown inquiring about the meaning of D back in Dressrosa. He has also been wronged by the world government, as shown in the past, where the WG knowingly let Flevence ruin itself with white lead. So if the final war is against the world government, then he would most likely partake in it. And then there's Eustass Kid. While he doesn't have any crazy lineage to our knowledge, he has been shown as a parallel of Luffy, and that in and of itself propels his stocks upwards for me. I'm not saying he's going to beat Luffy or rival Luffy's powers or anything of the sort, I just simply think that he will continue to grow throughout the series, just like Luffy has. Kid is one of the few characters who possesses Conqueror's Haki, and he has not once shown us anything in that realm yet, so he even still has a lot of untapped potential if he were to come back. When Kid was being copied by Damara Black, the fake Kid made a strange remark making fun of Joy Boy, calling them Joy Toy, and even stated that Captain Kid is 1,000,000 times stronger than that dead loser. Of course, this is Damara Black we're talking about, so it's more than likely intended as a joke, but we have seen that Oda likes to drop small hints about future reveals here and there, So I wouldn't be surprised if Kid somehow does tie into Joy Boy or even an ancient weapon. One thing's for sure though, the fact that Oda decided to have Demaru cosplay Kid means that he's at least still thinking about Kid. The last odd detail about Kid is that during his fight against Shanks, his railgun had the number 07 clearly marked on its side, which some people have been connecting to the Vegapunk clones and their creations, since they all have numbers marked 01 through 06. If there does happen to be a connection between Kid and Vegapunk, then maybe he'll have a chip on his shoulder aimed towards the world government, since they are the ones who assassinated him. I know there's a good handful of people who 100% believe that Kid is dead, but I can't really imagine it based on what we last saw. Even Oda himself, in a 2018 interview with Yayoi Kawatoko, says that he doesn't want to draw people dying. He just wants to draw more big post-battle parties. He even goes on and says, how are you supposed to have a good time after someone has just died? And he ends off by saying that at the end of the series, he wants to have one massive party. Given the fact that Luffy and Kid seem to be decent friends and have even partied together once before, I personally don't think that he'd kill Kid off so easily while letting his counterpart Law, who also fought an emperor and lost, get away alive. Another reason why I believe that Kid might still be alive is because of Gold D. Roger, Shanks' father figure and former captain. Gold Roger beat the Maelstrom Spider Pirates 24 years ago and killed everyone on the crew except the Captain Squard. If Shanks is anything like Gold Roger, then maybe he just left Kid and Killer as the sole survivors. And another example that's out of left field would be Kaido versus Moria, where Kaido killed all of Moria's crew and left Moria as the only survivor, which is what led Moria into the mindset that unkillable Nakama zombies were the shit. And now the last interesting thing I want to point out about Kid, Law, and even Luffy is that Oda went down all of the supernova and gave us their birthdays, their heights, like their favorite foods, and it seems insignificant at first, but when you take a look at the flower that Oda says resembles Luffy the most, it's actually a sunflower, which is pretty significant considering the fact that we later get revealed to the fact that Luffy is Sun God Nika, or at least has the Sun God Nika devil fruit. So because of that, it did make me scratch my chin a little bit and look over at Law and Kid and what flowers Oda said represents them. Law's flower is something called the Queen of the Night. And it's like, okay, sounds a little bit interesting, right? Queen of the Night, also nicknamed the Dutchman's Pipe Cactus, which I do think is really interesting considering the fact that Davy Jones is canon to the story of One Piece and that there's also a ship called the Flying Dutchman, right? So there's a couple of things going on with Law there. And as far as Queen of the Night goes, of course, there could be some moon connections there too. And then there's Kid, right? So Luffy has the sunflower, Law has the Queen of the Night, Kid has a tulip. And I know, first glance, it's like, okay, what the hell is a tulip about? But what's interesting about this is that we actually have a canon pirate group that showed up in a cover page story called the Tulip Pirates. While the Straw Hats have never met these guys, they are canon to the story. And what's interesting about them is their head shape, I would say. And it kind of reminds me of Emu a little bit. So I do wonder, like the Emu Joy Boy, Captain Kid is a million times stronger than Joy Boy. So it does make me wonder if there is some weird connection there Oda wants to play with. Oh yeah, and then in this latest chapter, we get a glimpse of 3 of the original kings fighting Joy Boy. And what's interesting is that all 3 of those kings have the exact same crown or head shape as Emu. And it's like, okay, it's either they're all wearing the exact same crowns, which is kind of strange, or maybe there's something else there. Maybe they all have tulips on their heads, and Kid could be related to one of these original kings. Like I said, crazy stretch, but, at some point, Oda is going to bring Kid back in, and how does he connect? Well, maybe we relate him to the Celestial Dragons or maybe even Emu. But yeah, hey, with that being said, let me know what you guys thought about this video down below. What do you think about Law? What do you think about Kid? Do you agree with anything I said? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comment section, and I'll catch you guys in next week. Signing out.